are listening to the United Not Uniform podcast. I am your host, Crystal. Each of us carries many stories, and we are not all the same. In this podcast, we will talk about faith, relationships, culture, and everything in between. You will sometimes laugh, agree, and/or disagree. That's great. We were never meant to be uniform, but we can be united. Welcome to United Not Uniform, where there is more than enough space for us to be seen and to see others. Hi, everyone. This is actually the first podcast episode I'm recording in 2026. I wanted to take a break from the Not What You Thought series to share an important life update. Yeah. In full transparency, I wanted to share this life update from a place of everything being resolved and worked out from the mountaintop, as opposed to like coming out of the valley. But I do think that there is power in our testimonies as they are and where we are. And my hope is that by sharing this journey while I'm in the midst of it, others of you who the Lord may be calling to take a step out in faith or try something new or deviate from the plans or the hopes that you had, that you may also be encouraged and know that our God is good for it, that He's trustworthy, that He's faithful. But that also for those who may have already taken that step and are in a similar place like I am, that you find comfort in knowing that you're not alone. Yeah. So, for those of you who do not know, I left my ministry position at my local church in October, the end of October 2025. Now, people leaving roles out of ministry, that's not unusual or different in any way, but it was the first time that the Lord had called me out of a position without being clear as to what was next or having another job lined up. Now, for those of you who are in the US or have been aware of what's happening in the United States, 2025 has been was a really rough year. We had a lot of people, there was a lot of fear, a lot of violence, a lot of turmoil, a lot of people losing jobs overnight. And so part of the role that I had in ministry was that I had the privilege and the honor to sit with people who were facing a lot of these crises, facing a lot of these questions when life felt so uncertain. And when the Lord put on my heart that it was time to leave this role, it felt like I was taking advantage of a gift when there were so many other people that didn't have the option or the choice, or even the knowledge that they were going to lose their job overnight. And so I felt really silly. I also felt guilty. It's crazy the emotions that we feel. But to have witnessed so many people grapple and wrestle with life being turned upside down, it felt like I was willingly choosing to do that. And that felt a bit strange and a bit odd. But in hindsight, I realize and I know that when the Lord calls us out to do something, it's not about our understanding. It's not about our plans or our comfort. It's about trusting in Him and trusting in what He has, and believing Him for it. Yeah. And so the conversation about why I last started a couple of years ago, I found myself, I loved the work that I got to, loved building up the collective church. I loved how we're learning how to be a unified body in Christ with all of the diversity and different experiences and perspectives. But I also knew that the Lord was calling me to do more with this ministry, but also just more in a local level. And I knew that there was also a pastoral call on my life. And I had been meeting with my pastors who were super supportive and loving and kind. But I just found that it was just hard it felt like I was trying to force against the mold a little bit in trying to pursue some of these things that the Lord was calling me into. And after I had been mentored by the executive pastor, we were meeting a lot to talk about, okay, well, what's next? What does this look like? It was kind of shocking how we both came to the conclusion of like, wow, this might not be at this church anymore. The Lord seems like He's calling you out of this role. And it felt like a gut punch because I'm sitting here, did I just like talk myself out of a job? What am I going to do? Like all these other things. And my flesh very quickly wanted to walk it back and try to make it work. But I knew deep down, like the Lord had already been placing it in my heart that it was time to leave. There was just a lot of fear, a lot of, like I have finances, there are like debts I'm still trying to pay off. And so it was just really scary, the idea of leaving, not knowing what's next, knowing that I also wasn't in the most secure place to do so. I've had friends who like stewarded their resources well, and were able to live off of savings for like 6 months to a year, right? I was not in that position. And so it was a very real thing of, okay, Lord, I know that you're calling me out. I know that it is time, but I'm scared and I don't know how this is going to look or what this is going to look like. In his mercy and in his kindness, sorry guys, I feel like this journey is all over the place. The Lord put it on my heart to share this part of my story this morning. So I haven't had time to make notes, so it's coming right from the heart. So bear with me. So earlier that year, I had the opportunity to go to a conference known as Voice of the Prophets, and I was invited by a very dear friend. And it was just such a joy and a delight. It was also kind of scary because I had never really gone to anything outside of my own church that it talked about the prophetic. And I went to this conference, and it was really transformative. I might have to bring her on here and we can talk about our experiences there. But I got a lot of clarity, especially when it came to not only how the Lord speaks to me, but also the sensitivity that I have, especially when engaging with others. Several people came up to me and they're like, "You're gonna leave your position." And now this is back in April, and I'm like, "Y'all don't know me like that? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?" And I think that there was like a little bit of comfort in knowing that, like, okay, this isn't working, as opposed to it like trying all these other ways to make it work, ways to be at peace, ways to feel like I could be obedient to the Lord without not doing my full duty, as someone working on church staff. And just to have complete strangers, like, come up to me out of nowhere and say, like, "Your time is winding down. The Lord's calling you out of that position." And I was like, "Okay." You kind of, like, put it in the back of your mind. I was newer to the prophetic, so y'all forgive me. And so then when this conversation happened, I was like, "Okay." I was like, "The Lord in his loving and and kindness had warned me earlier." And so there was a peace, but there was also a lot of fear. And so now it was a time of, okay, how am I going to let people know? Like, how transitioning responsibilities? What does that look like? All this other kind of stuff. And of course, like God made a way and provision, and it all happened in the way that it was supposed to. It was informed to the larger congregation that I was transitioning. There was a whole service ceremony. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm off staff. And I remember the last day, and it didn't feel real until, the ceremony and then until the last day, because I was off on Friday, so my last day was that Thursday, and people were like, "We'll see you Sunday," and I'm like, I mean, you can see me on Sunday, but just not in the same role, and it kinda hit me that this was the role that the Lord called me out of corporate to be in. It was the first ministry job I had in the church that I came to Christ in, right? There was a lot of history, a lot of journeying, a lot of service, and it felt like I was leaving home, right? And so, yeah. And so I was like, "Oh, it's just in between." And people were asking if I was leaving or what I was going to do. And I know that the Lord put on my heart that I would be working another ministry capacity. I knew that, especially with United at Uniform, which I love this ministry, we're still very much in our infancy stage. It's not ready to be the sole source of income yet, right? And I didn't want to try to rush this ministry and make it into something that it wasn't, out of fear and be in disobedience to the Lord. And so I remember coming back Sunday after I had left staff, and it really felt like I was visiting a whole brand new church. It was as if without my assignment or my role, yeah, it was so weird. It was like it was the church that I had served at, but it wasn't. It was a lot of like quick hellos, a lot of people rushing to do stuff. And again, it's like I came during second service, which we typically have a whole bunch of new people, which made sense as to why like there were a lot of new faces and a lot of new people. But it was just also realizing that the Lord was winding down a particular season of my life. That was just really hard to wrestle with and grieve and to accept at the same time. Um, it just felt like I was just losing a lot, not knowing what was next or what was to come, but knowing that it was what the Lord called me to do. So I was like, hey, let me go visit other churches. I was blessed enough that my church was able to provide, like, so I could take a sabbatical. So I was able to receive money through the end of December. And that was just such a gift because I didn't have to stress right away of how I was going to eat, how I was going to pay bills. They were just so kind and so loving in that way. And so that did alleviate some pressure. But I found myself, especially that first week, so it seems so silly um, because I'm like, here I am, I'm in seminary. I know the goodness of God. I've witnessed him in so many ways. I've seen him work miracles. I've seen that even in the midst of this of 2025, how he has come through for so many people and has been so good. And even for me too, right? And here I was feeling like, okay, now there's not a job to do. Now there's not people to take care of. I'm actually the person that needs to be taken care of. And for those of you who I'm not claiming this over my life, but I noticed, especially during the winter, that seasonal depression is a very real thing. And so the idea of even transitioning out of this position during a time of year that already typically can be a bit harder for me and not have a routine was just really scary on top of it too. Um, and so I was like, okay, well, who am I when people don't need me? Who am I when I'm not fulfilling a role? And there was just a lot of silence. There was a lot of quiet. And I think that was just also really hard to wrestle with too, in realizing, okay, not only is this the end of an era, sorry, before coffee, y'all, um, but that a lot of my role and my assignment was on what I did as opposed to friendships or relationships. Again, life is lifing. People have life. People have things to do. I'm not taking it personal, but I think it was just very eye opening in that time of how something had taken up so much of my life, how quickly it felt everyone else moved on, and I was just kind of, like, in this stuck spot, and so, yeah, it was a lot of wrestling, a lot of, like, frustration with God. I found myself trying to stay busy, trying to, like, do all these things, and whenever I prayed about it, the Lord's like, "This is a gift. I'm giving you a gift. I'm giving you time of sabbatical, time of rest where you were gonna be provided for," and it's just so funny how when things don't look how we had hoped, I realize like, wow, like how quickly I want to go back to control, how quickly I want to um, fill my time with things, but I don't have anything to do, right? And so it was a very interesting time. And I don't think I was fully honest with the amount of lament I still had, a lot of sadness, a lot of processing, not only that year, but the last couple of years while also navigating, it was a big decision to like leave without having the next job lined up. And so I know my parents were very nervous. My father was a little bit nervous. My mom, she was calmer than I was. I was like, thank you, mom, for your faith. I remember telling her at home at the kitchen, and she just had this biggest smile on her face, when I told her, and I was like, "I think the Lord had already told you something too." Um, and both of my parents have been extremely supportive during this time. Um, and my sister, of course, too. It's just it ha it's a bit strange for a 35-year-old to leave her job and not have anything else lined up. And so after the first 2 weeks of wrestling and fighting against the season that I was very clearly in, and the emotions I needed to address, the sadness that I was feeling, I finally started to get into a routine of, okay, what does it look like now? How do I build routines now in my life? How do I savor this time of rest while learning how to let go, release the things that are no longer mine to carry? I mean, some of the things I wasn't supposed to be carrying at all, while still trusting in the Lord's sovereignty and his goodness in the midst of all of it. As I was in the middle of November, the Lord put on my heart to, and it had been for some time, of putting together um, a poetry book. Now, I had been part of this writing club, and it was a great opportunity where you got to meet with publishers, do your pitch. I had been a member for several years, but this was the first time I had a book idea already, did the webinar. I was ready. And for some reason, I completely mixed up the dates. Now, before I would be like, oh, I'm just like being very forgetful. But in hindsight, I realized like that wasn't the path that the Lord had for me. And having to also reconcile with that. Because again, other plans that I thought were gonna pan out were not panning out, and having to like grieve that. And so anyway, the Lord was still like all the feels. The Lord was like, well, you still have this book. And even if you haven't met with publishers, even if you don't know how this book is gonna be used, let's put it together. And so I had gone to a writing conference earlier that year and got some pointers from some people who have published so many books. I was like, you published all these books. It's amazing. It's like you're writing a book like every week. And yeah, the first book, I say first book, okay, all right, Lord. Uh, it was a book of poetry. So it's a book that consists of poems that I have been writing with the Lord over the last 3 years, about the journey of lament and grief and hope, and how it's not always linear. But it was in those prayers where I was crying out to the Lord and I was spending time with him that I not only was able to find peace and comfort and joy in the relationship I have with him, but to also know more about God, know more about myself, and to have more joy than I could ever imagine. And so it was beautiful going through some of these poems. I love it. How there'll be, for those of you who don't journal, please journal, because rereading those old words of where you were and how the Lord showed up, or even old prayers that you've had that you stopped praying for. It's just like there's something about reminiscing and remembering not only where you were and where you have come from, but who God is in your life and in your story. And so as I'm reading these poems, I see all the ways in which the Lord has shown up for me in the past, which it's giving me courage for the season that I'm in now. And I finished the book the end of November. It was in a very rough draft, but the poems were there. In this time, I found myself, I would wake up and write poetry with the Lord, which resulted in the creation of the newsletter, which will be starting back up in February, where every other week I send a newsletter that has a poem that I wrote, and a devotional that you can, or a reflection and prayer to get you through midweek. But just again, that reminder of such a sweet time with the Lord, where it was like every day we were writing, every day there were new poems and reassurances and comforts that only he could provide. And it was like, man, I'm just going to be emotional in this, and that's okay. But it's like waking up and I'm so afraid because I have no idea. I have no idea how things are going to look. I have no idea. Like, it's like one of the few times I don't have a job. Like, and it's just like terrifying, right? And so to have those poems and to reread them and to reread even like how faithful not only the Lord is, but how assured I had been that the Lord was going to move, gave me the courage to do so and to move forward day by day and to savor this time, even though it was uncomfortable, even though there were a lot of tears and there were a lot of feelings, that it was all necessary. I will say, like, now going into December and during this time, gave me the opportunity to invest more in my local community. The church that I had served at was in another area, and so I often found myself commuting back and forth. Um, and now it's like, okay, well, I don't have to go into the city that often. Let me get to know the place in which I've been planted. And it's been very sweet to get to know my neighbors, to develop a routine, to support local businesses. Again, being able to still be able to have experiences, be able to still do things, to have financial provision in a time where, without a job, I don't take lightly. And I always had everything that I need. There was some discomfort. There was having to say no to a couple of things. There was also having to confront moments of poor stewardship, and the need to have more of a safety blanket, right? But ultimately, the main part and point is, see, I fall into it so quickly of making plans and have provision, is that the Lord was showing me who He was and how I was being cared for. And so we're in December. I'm like getting used to this like no work life. I was like, okay, this is cool. And the book has been written. I've sent it to a couple of people. I'm meeting with mentors. I'm meeting with different people to kind of figure out, okay, what's next. The Lord had been very clear with this role that I had at the church. That's a whole other journey. The transition even into working in ministry after working a corporate job. I knew that the Lord had called me out of that position, and it had been for some time. I had applied to like so many other jobs, and it was like to the point where I was getting rejection letters. Maybe let me phrase it differently. Not rejection letters. I was getting like not we went with a different candidate letters from jobs that like typically don't even respond. It was just like such a parent like stop doing what you're doing. And so that when the Lord had kept pressing into my heart, it's like you're looking at a job that's going to pay you the most. You're looking at money as the main motivator as opposed to being aligned with my will. And so it was during the pandemic, and I remember I would walk in the morning during one of the meeting calls, and I would always be able to see the sun coming up through the mountains back in West Virginia. And I remember being on top of the hill, and I had gotten an email about a job that was perfect for me, and it was a job that I had just left. And it had just been very clear where the Lord had wanted me to go. It was still hard because it was not what I was expecting. And it did require a lot of surrender because it felt like, even for my parents, they were like, okay, you're going to leave a corporate job where they're offering you more money. You could be making six figures to take a pay cut to work at a local church. And I'm smiling so big right now because I took the job, and it transformed my life. But even after, even taking the job and leaving the environment that I was in my last job, there was just an ease and a lightness that I felt. But I was also able to accomplish so much that it didn't like it was only but God. Like I was able to purchase this home, and even with the bank, they were all like, okay, well, you left your corporate job, you're working for a church. Like, what's going on? Like, buyers might be a little anxious and nervous. And how the Lord had been so faithful and given me a home, right? And again, a reminder of like trusting in Him, trusting in His character, and trusting who He is, that He would have me. It doesn't mean that everything will go out the way that I had hoped or planned. There were some struggles with like the home buying process. It wasn't all easy breezy, but it was just very clear that there was favor, and that when I found this home, that it would be mine. And so now in December, I'm having these conversations with different people, and I'm thinking, oh, the Lord's preparing me to work in this other church. Like I'm like already kind of resigned. We're like, that's where I'm gonna be. And like the more and more like I'm engaging, I'm like, actually, I don't think that this is where the Lord is planning me at all. And like having to like relinquish that dream and also grieve again. There's a lot of grieving because it's like, okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. I still don't know what's next. Month is going to be the last month I get a paycheck. What am I going to do? And just have a lot of fear. I had sprained my finger at that time, doing like nothing extraordinary or anything, which is also crazy. So I had like a splint and everything, and just thankful that I had still had benefits at the time. When I hurt myself, again, um, the Lord's provision even in that, but it started to feel very scary. I also found myself developing a new level not of capacity but of compassion for those living in the country who do not have health insurance, who do not have employment, where you are thinking about like the next paycheck, where you are thinking about, can I afford this, can I afford care, right? It's a very real reality, unfortunately, in this country. And I know even still I cannot fully understand or relate, but I do know that it has given me a new level of compassion for those who are living on the edge, for those who one paycheck away from things completely turning upside down. And so, yeah, there's a lot that I can see that the Lord is opening my eyes and my heart to. Even with going to a new church, I got to the point where I stopped going to church, and that's like even going into um, January, and not because like, trust me, I love the church. I watch services online, like, I love when the community gets together and it is meant to be what the Lord designed it to be. But I got so tired of being new. I got so tired of being a guest. I got so tired of being the other on the outskirts of conversations, and as someone who worked in hospitality and was able to lead the hospitality ministry and the ministry of presence, it is so apparent when it is not there. And even with that, it gave me a new capacity for people who maybe want to come to church and it's overwhelming, maybe want to find a church community, but they haven't found the right one. It can be very easy to want to give up. It can be very easy to want to stop trying. And I encourage you to keep leaning in and keep trying. You will find your church home, just like I will find my new church home. But I'm going through all of these emotions at the same time where I'm grieving the one that I had lost. And so there were so many like really beautiful churches that welcomed me in and were super hospitable, like um, St. Moses in Baltimore, Healing Hearts Worship Center, The Well. There's a lot of places that were very kind and welcoming to me. Um, as I've been in this middle space. But again, I do think that the Lord, it's very easy when you have been in a church for a really long time, that you forget, I don't want to say the weight, but like how scary it can be to find a new church home, what people bring, or the fight for that motivation to come, right? And I think even in that, it was also beautiful to learn what it was like to experience church as opposed to run church. And I'm using church to describe Sunday service. People are the church, not, I just want to make that distinction. But I had realized that I had not really experienced a Sunday service in a really long time. And so it was also nice to be new, to be welcomed, and to be able just to receive, even if it was hard and not having like a place that felt like home yet. And so it's January. It's the last week of January. And I still don't have my next job. Yeah, I don't have my next job. It's kinda crazy, I went to a, New Year's Eve, worship service, and it was so amazing, like, it was at the Well. Pastor Victor had been talking about the Valley of Dry Bones and really realizing that, this time of rest and this period of rest was necessary because it was reset for me, and realizing what I had been carrying, what I needed to release, what I had been grieving, and what I needed to heal from. And then also all the joy that came from it, the laughter, celebrating my birthday the way that I wanted, and being cared for in a way that I didn't know I could be, and the value and the gift of the friendships that I do have. There was just so much that these couple of months carried. And so going into the new year, it was like, okay, like the reality kind of hit of, what am I going to do? Rest has been cool, Lord, but you know, we got to eat, right? And so right after that worship service, I get terribly sick. I think I must have had the flu. And I remember talking to my sister. She's like, "You need to go to urgent care. You need to go to the doctor." And I'm sitting there and I'm like, "I can't. I don't have health insurance." And I was like, "I can go, right? It's just it's not covered, right? It's a lot more expensive." And so in that very real time of realizing like, "Oh my goodness, like this is how so many people live." And like they may be sick and all these things and having to negotiate what they can and cannot do. Yeah. And I was taking medicine and like again, single woman in mid 30s. I was like, oh my gosh, am I middle age now? This is crazy. 35 is a whole new place to be. And yeah, sorry, that just made me chuckle. Sometimes I just forget how old I am. I feel like once you become like you're in your it's like I know I'm not 30. It's been several years since then, but like where am I? And I'm like, no, we're 35. We are a whole 35. And so I'm sick and I'm having to like take care of myself. And often I know that a tactic of the enemy is to always bring up my singleness when I'm not feeling my best or I'm feeling a bit low. And so, like, having to take it easy and being in forced rest and starting the new year in that way. And then the following week, I had an intensive class for seminary on trauma and crisis counseling. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how am I in this class? I'm so sick. And it was like a Zoom call. So it's like from 10 a.m. to like 7 p.m. And we're talking about trauma and crisis for 5 days. And it's kind of it's nothing but the Lord, because the class was very, intense in the sense that, it is an intensive, it's a lot of content all at once, but it's also the topic. It's just very heavy when you're talking about trauma, when you're talking about grief, when you're talking about lament, and crisis. There's just a lot. And, as I was talking to some other people when I was sharing what I was learning, I was like, am I crisis? Have I experienced crisis? And realizing in hindsight, it's like, oh wow, these are some of the things that like I didn't have language for or know, right? And it was in that class, as challenging as it was, that I regained my love and my excitement for the call of pastoral care. And the difference between the role of pastor and pastoral care. I feel like there's quite a few pastors who are more in the other giftings as opposed to shepherds. And so, how I just saw a greater need for pastoral care within churches, but also, especially of ministry leaders as well. And so I just felt really energized and excited because I felt like I had clarity. I was also like becoming even more, as I had been praying and spending time with the Lord, like more discerning and more sensitive to the move of the Spirit and what was happening in the room. There was just like, even still now, there's just so much more that I'm picking up on and I'm learning and I'm growing. And it has been, y'all, it has been a roller coaster in a lot of ways. But honestly, I don't think I would have traded this time for anything because even now, where I am, I love who I'm becoming. I love that I could take this risk. And even though I wrestle with the Lord in some moments, I'm like, what is going to happen? And I panic. Overall, I'm reminded of who the Lord is and that He is someone I can trust and who has been so faithful in so much of my story and so much of my journey. I get excited about knowing that the assignment that's next for me, I'll be able to pastorally care for people with a new level of capacity and to be even better at it because of the training that I'm receiving. Y'all, there's also been so many praise reports. I was worried about actually not having a job if I'd be able to continue with school. I'm just like, there's a lot of tears, there's a lot of feelings. This is turning out to be a longer podcast. I promise we're at the end. I'm landing the plane. Um, but I was so scared that I would have to take a break from seminary. And for those of you who are doing an end-div program, it can be anywhere, depending on your school. The average time for mine is 5 to 7 years. And so it's been long. I'm starting my fourth year now. It's been a long time of like being in school from spring, summer, fall, like year round school. And it felt like having to take a break from it was like me giving up and another thing that I had to let go of. But I had to be honest. I was like, look, Lord, I know financially it doesn't make sense. I can't do it. Um, but also, I know that if you want me to do it, you'll make a way. And if you don't, then there's a reason why I'm not meant to do it. And I released it. Y'all, when I tell you, I got an email the day the deadline for when payment was due for classes. I got a full scholarship for the semester out of the blue, out of the blue. And I was just like, Lord, you were so good. And I know I needed to be honest and surrender that. That whatever he has planned for me is better than what I can imagine or plan for myself. And as someone who is a planner, as someone who has battled with both pride and control, that is a very scary thing to do. But it's also not, in knowing that who you're placing your trust in is one of the safest and the best things that you can do. And so here I am about to start my semester with classes that have already been paid in full. Um, Somehow there was even a surplus from what I had been paying, so I received a check from the school that covered additional bills and expenses. Y'all, I'm just telling you, the Lord has been so faithful and is so faithful. And so if this is you and you're in this place of whether you are still in the midst of it and you're waiting for the Lord to move and it's getting a little uncomfortable, trust me, I get it. This is the last week of January. The bills are going to be due January 31st. Um, but the Lord has got me safely and securely this far. And I'm trusting and believing that He is doing miracles. I was like, here I am. For those of you on the East Coast, we have a snowstorm. I was like, I can't even leave if I wanted to. I am stuck here, right? Um, but again, just being reminded that it's not about me. I get to abide with the Lord. I get to be close with Him. I get to pray and discern and move according to His Spirit, but I'm not moving out of fear. Um, and even if things don't work out the way that I had hoped or I had planned, I am trusting and believing that it will be for my better and for my good. Ah, and I don't know if I could have said that if I hadn't taken the leap, if I hadn't trusted the Lord with this time of my life, if I wouldn't have walked away from all that I knew. A friend of mine, she keeps bringing up, a really good friend of mine, keeps talking about how a lot of what I'm experiencing, and even in her own life, it's very similar to Abram. Like we always talk about Abraham from the lens of victory, from how it all worked out, from him already being in the land that was promised. But that story now has a new weight for because to leave everything behind is very hard. And there are a lot of emotions and there are a lot of feelings that come up with that. When I was wrestling and joking with the Lord, I was like, well, Abram at least went with Lot. He had Sarai. Like, come on. um, and even for me, I've been blessed with friends who are in a similar season who have walked alongside me too. But, we are still praying for that husband. I'm just saying. That story has new meaning, Genesis 12. And so if you are person who the Lord has been prompting you and you are afraid to take the step, take the step. I know that there are decisions in my life where I chose comfort over the Lord. The Lord was patient with me and gave me another opportunity, right? But it would have been much simpler if I had just listened to Him in the beginning. And to not view this choice as a burden, but view it as such an honor. And I know this is coming from someone who is in the midst of it, so please know that I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, but it is an honor. When you think of the people in the Bible who the Lord has called out, the people who gave up everything to be able to choose the Lord, to be able to stand firm in your faith of who God is, and to trust what He has for you more than what you can see for yourself. Y'all, there has been so much that I have learned. There has been so much I have experienced, so many areas I have grown in that I would not have if I had refused to step out of something that I knew was no longer working for me. and was no longer, um, God had no longer given me the grace to do. And so He's worth it. He's worth the cost. He's worth the discomfort because who I am even now in the midst of it, there's so much joy, there's so much life, there is so much hope. I've started to dream again. I've started to cherish my life in ways that I could never without realizing how sacred and how beautiful they are. Even with school, I'm going into the semester like, what can I learn? Like I was like, it's back like first semester, right? But it's worth it. It's worth it, y'all. It is worth it. And I can't wait to come on here and share with you the good news. I'm already seeing the victory, guys. I'm already seeing and trusting. And so, actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to end this episode in a prayer. I know we typically don't do that, but yeah, I just want us to be bold. I think a lot of us have been living very smallly. I was like, there's a better way of saying that, but I don't know what it is. Um, and it's not to say that our lives are small, but I think that we have chosen to make ourselves small to fit in. We have chosen to make ourselves small because we are fearful that we are too much. We have chosen to make ourselves small because we are afraid of where the Lord is calling us to be. My very wise professor, when he was praying over at the end of my intensive, he prayed over each and every one of us. And he prayed specifically over me that I would be bold and be bold even in imperfection. And I think that that really freed me in a lot of ways because you guys know I describe myself as a recovering perfectionist. I'm trying not to in the standards that I have for myself and unrealistic standards. And the Lord is not asking me to be perfect. He's just asking me to be obedient and to come. And so something about realizing that I get to be bold and I won't get it 100% right all the time, but that I am trusting and I am sitting with the one who can be trusted, the one who is sovereign, and the one who holds me in his righteous hand. And yeah, that's my prayer for you all too. That no matter where you are in this journey, whether the Lord is starting to stir up dreams that make you a little uncomfortable, or He's asking you to take a step that feels like it goes against everything that makes sense, that He is worth it, that He is trustworthy, and that He will hold you. He has held me these last couple of months. And if He is going to do it for me, He will do it for you. It may not look how you want it. There have been struggle, don't get me wrong. A lot of things that I had to navigate that I didn't want to navigate, but I have always had what I needed. I've been loved so deeply and cared for in ways that I could not even imagine. And for that, it has been worth it. So let's conclude in prayer. Lord, I thank you for the gift of transitions. I thank you that in your all knowing and sovereign and good way, that you do not leave us where we feel comfortable, that you call us to do great things, but you do not leave us by ourselves in it. You are a God that is so personal. You are one that is close with us at all times. You have given us the gift of your Spirit. You have given us your Son. And so I know these choices, these decisions may seem overwhelming and big, but what is big for you? So, Lord, I pray for the person that is wrestling, that they would be reminded that you are safe, God, that you are trustworthy, that you are faithful. That as they learn to surrender what they had hoped and what they dreamed, that they can also lament with you, they can grieve with you, and trust that they will heal. Trust that there will be new life on the other end. Trust that they will experience joy. And that it will lead to a life that they couldn't have even imagined or dreamed of. One of such freedom, one of such favor, and one of such blessing. Lord, for the one who You are stirring up things and passions and ideas. Lord, I pray that they embrace it, that they write it down in notebooks, that they pray and surrender it to you, that they trust in your timing and in your way and in your provision, God. Lord, you will often reveal things to us in advance before it's time. And so I pray for discernment. I pray for patience and that they are reminded that you wait with them. And Lord, I pray over those who are in similar positions like myself, who we are waiting and relying and trusting in you for a miracle or another miracle. You've already done so much, Lord. You will not leave or forsake, God. You've already gone before us and you are with us now. So we will not be afraid. We will not be discouraged, but we will abide and rest in the one who can hold it all. We pray all this in your name. Amen. Thank you all so much for joining for this episode of United Not Uniform. Remember, there's more than enough space for you to be seen and to see others. I'll see you all next time. Bye.